this so I don't wind up just yelling at you for the next hour. Um, thank you. Thank you for having me. Uh, I know you all want to keep reading your visions, but as John said, you've got a really impressive panel here to talk through this energy part. So we're gonna just kind of dive into it quickly. My name is Adam Sled. My name's up there. I'm the executive director at the Dominion Energy Innovation Center. We're a nonprofit energy technology incubator and accelerator in Ashland, which means that I spend my time with energy entrepreneurs from around the world who are developing solutions we can deploy here in Virginia. And I get to spend a lot of time sort of on the road. And normally when I'm on the road in markets like San Francisco or New York or Boston, um, people in those markets like to talk about themselves and what they have going on. They've got a lot going on, but this year something changed. When I started going to those places and told people I was from Virginia, everyone got excited. And if you're in this room, you probably know why. Raise your hand if you've read an article about energy for AI recently. If you read newspapers or really any form of news, you probably have, right? It's all anyone is talking about. And when I've been places this year, people go, "Oh, you're from Virginia. You know what's going on." Right? So this is the first time in my lifetime that when I travel for work, people get really excited just about the fact that I'm from Virginia, because they are looking to us as the leaders. Right? We have earned this leadership position through our efforts for the last couple decades, and we have to continue earning this leadership position. But everyone is looking to us, and so this panel is about how we're going to keep energy from not just being a bottleneck to continued economic development, but is the driver for continued economic development. So I'm lucky, as we said, we're not going to do like full bios, but we've got Rick Needham, who's the Chief Commercialization Officer at Commonwealth Fusion, Emil, who's one of my board members and is the VP of Generation Development at Dominion Energy, April Wade, the Executive Director of the Virginia Nuclear Energy Consortium, and Morgan Wayland, who is the Director of Governmental and Public Affairs at Virginia Natural Gas. So we're going to jump in with Rick, because my first question for the panel, and we will save time for Q&A, but my first question for the panel is, what is the promise of fusion? You want to jump right in?
Sure. Thanks, Adam. And I've been asked because most people don't know exactly what fusion is or where it stands today. So I've been asked to give a little bit of a primer, I suppose, on what that is, and kind of I'll give you also a sense of where Commonwealth Fusion Systems is on our path. So real quickly, just who is CFS, and I'll get to what's the promise of fusion. We're a company that spun out of MIT in 2018. We are focused on the architecture that we've chosen for our fusion power plant is the one that's most advanced. So the fastest, surest path, we apply a key innovation, which is basically much stronger magnets to make it much smaller and to make it perform better. We've raised just under $3 billion so far. We now have over 1,000 employees. We're building a device up outside Boston, one of those towns that you mentioned, Adam. And that'll be the proof that fusion works. But in parallel, we're now starting to build our first fusion power plant. That will be in Chesterfield County, just south of Richmond. We're doing that with a joint development agreement with Dominion. And we've signed a bunch of the biggest fusion deals in history for power for that plant. So what the heck is fusion? What am I talking about? In essence, it's what happens up in the stars. It's a combination of very small elements, versions of hydrogen, that when they come together, they make a slightly bigger atom, a helium, but in the process, they release an enormous amount of energy. This is like Einstein's E equals mc squared. Some of the mass gets converted to energy. It is the most power-dense reaction known in the universe. It's why the stars continue to burn for billions of years. We're trying to take that reaction, bring it down to Earth, put it inside a machine that then generates heat, makes steam, spins a turbine, makes electricity. So that's what we're trying to do. But why is that so important? What's the promise of it? I don't know if any of you have ever played those video games like Civilization or SimCity. The very last power generation thing you can get is fusion. Once you've got fusion, you pretty much have won the game. So, and why is that? Because it's clean, it has no emissions, it has helium is the output. It's firm power, so it's dispatchable. You can put it somewhere. It has all the benefits of a fossil plant, which is like when you want it, you turn it on, it produces power. It is scalable, so we're making it a very modular and scalable way. So in essence, you're just manufacturing a machine, and you can then deploy them. It's secure, so it doesn't rely on any geopolitically fraught supply chain. The fuel, in essence, is two very small elements. This cup of water here is enough has enough water. Deuterium would be in here to power your entire lifetime. And we make our other fuel, tritium. So in essence, it becomes a plant that you could put all the fuel on site day one and shut the door. So it is permanent energy security for the most abundant fuel on the planet. You could run our civilization for literally like billions of years off of this, and it's safe. So the flip side, it's hard to achieve the conditions you need to make this happen. We can talk more about that. But on the flip side, it means it's very safe because the worst day on a fusion plant, some plane crashes into it, it just shuts down. There's no chain reaction. There's no chance of meltdown. There's no long-term radioactive waste. It doesn't have any proliferation risk. So for all those reasons, fusion is great, and people are very interested in it. The one challenge is not here today. So how do we get it here today? Here's our path and what we're doing. Our founders came out of MIT working on a world record-setting fusion plant that was on MIT's campus. We came up with the innovation, like there's this new material called high temperature superconductor. I have some in my pocket if you want to see it later. We can use that to make basically the world's biggest, strongest magnets. That's really important because the particles that we're trying to contain are charged particles. It's hot enough that the gas separates into nuclei and electrons, so you can actually use a magnet to contain them when we need to do that. We proved that out in 2021. People saw what that it was, and they said, holy cow. And we raised a 1.8 billion Series B to go build the machine in the middle, which we call Spark. That's what we're building outside Boston. There's a picture of it right now. It's about 70% complete. In the meantime, we're also then started to site and start to develop the power plant, which would be the next step, and that is called ARC. That's going to be a 400 megawatt plant. This is a picture of Spark from above. This is the proof point. We're going to show that we get a lot more energy out of this reaction than went into it, a critical kind of milestone. In fact, about 10 times more energy out than in. This is being built in a modular way that we can go basically scale up a little bit and go put into a power plant. It's going to do it at a substantial scale, so 100 megawatts of thermal power. That's 500 to 1,000 times what the best fusion plants have done so far. And it's based on, as I said in the very beginning, the most kind of proven science within fusion. The objective, though, is to prove it out, and then we go build the power plant. That's what we call ARC. That's that 400 megawatt plant. This is what the rendering looks like. Obviously, it's not this one's not a real picture in terms of real equipment. One day it will be, and we're working on that hard. And this is where it's going to be sited. Again, just south of Richmond in Chesterfield County, doing it in partnership with Dominion, working collaboratively with the state and with the county of Chesterfield County. This provides partners, stakeholders, utilities, a clean, firm option that you could deploy anywhere. That doesn't have all the constraints on how you deploy other technologies. It can be a new tool in the toolkit that could advance us to a point where power is limitless. It has no constraints in terms of supply chain, and we're excited to be working closely with the county and the state to make this happen right here in Virginia. And we've already signed some, big offtake agreements. One with Google, one with a big Italian oil and gas company for the majority of the offtake of the plant. So. I would just say, your question was, what's the size of the prize, so to speak, with fusion? It kind of breaks the mind a little bit to think about. You can create energy from such small. We literally turn grams of material into gigawatts. It kind of breaks the mind, but it's not. You don't have to look very far to see what's the potential. So, any sci-fi reader, or if you watch a series or a movie. What do they all have in common with humans and energy? And like 20 years from now or more, like we've mastered fusion. It's not just the next energy solution. It is the final one. There's nothing more energy dense, more power dense, more deployable in the universe. The stars have told us that for billions of years. So we're just trying to bring that down to earth and break the local monopoly our sun has on fusion.
Easy.
Yeah.
Easy.
Well, I wouldn't say easy, but yeah. But we're working hard on it every day.
Okay, so we just sort of started from the end, essentially. Then we started from the end where we've figured that out and are moving that forward. But now I'm going to pull it back to roughly. So that plant will do 400 megawatts in Chesterfield, which is the size of one pretty good sized data center that's being developed today. That's 400 megawatts. So, given the amount of data center development that we have underway or contracted here in the state, we would need many, many, many of those plants. And in the meantime, we have a lot of generation to sort out, from all types of generation sources as the fusion gets ready. So, Emil, can you dive into when we need the amount of power that's going to, say, double Virginia's grid in the next 10 to 15 years? What types of power are we talking about? What's the difference between base load or firm power that data centers say they need and intermittent power sources? And how does that look for you on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. So, all right, that's better.
There
Sorry.
you go.
Great to be here. Thanks for the invitation to participate in the panel. So we have a lot of work to do. The data center demand is real. I think if you've seen some of our latest information, we're showing about 40 to 50 gigawatts of contracts signed of new data center demand that's likely to be deployed in the next 10 to 20 years. In fact, the head of our data center practice, Stan Blackwell, is here as well, and he's also very busy. My team is responsible for developing new power generation facilities here in Virginia, and you can imagine, our team has definitely grown. We've gone from half a dozen folks 10 years ago to over 35, close to 40 people, solely developing projects, looking for sites, getting the permits, putting the business case together, going through final investment decision process. And we're doing that with the technologies that we have available to us today. And there's basically five. There's wind, solar, energy storage, nuclear, and natural gas generation. Those are really what we have available to deploy today. And if you look at our integrated resource plan that we just published a month ago, it shows that in the next 20 years, we have to deploy about 35,000 megawatts of new generation. So think about, the 400 megawatt fusion plant. That's, I don't know what the math is exactly, but that's over 100 fusion plants if we were to do it all with fusion. Now, we're very excited about the partnership with Commonwealth Fusion Systems. They are definitely leading the charge in the fusion energy industry. There's close to 50 private fusion companies out there today working on cracking this code because it is very complicated. There's a lot of different technologies to get there. But we're very excited to be working with Commonwealth Fusion Systems, and we started working with them actually about 5-6 years ago, and in 2022 worked very closely with Rick and his team to try to attract them to come to Virginia and bring the world's first commercial fusion plant to Virginia, where the largest growth in electric demand exists in the whole country. And we're just super excited to be working with you on this new and coming technology. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And I think in the next 5 years, it could, it will likely become part of our integrated resource planning process, which is really the key to then developing additional projects. But going back to your question, right now in our IRP, we have about 35,000 megawatts planned in the next 20 years. Almost half of that is solar, about 17,000 megawatts, on top of the 5,000 or so that we've already built or have under construction. And as a result, we're the third largest utility now in the United States, as far as our solar portfolio and operating facilities. So, we're a leader in that space. We're innovating all the time. We're building the largest offshore wind project in the nation, 2.6 gigawatts. The timing couldn't be more perfect to meet all of this data center demand. That project is going very well. using a lot of innovations there as well. The largest wind turbine technology available in the market today at 15 megawatts per turbine. 10, 15 years ago, that was 2 megawatts. And so these have grown enormously in size, but that takes a lot of logistics expertise to make something that large be deployed. And we're very thankful to be partnered with the Port of Virginia on that. We're planning to deploy quite a bit of energy storage as well. And over the next 15, 20 years, about 2 gigawatts, that could increase in the future. We have some natural gas generation that we need, and that's a dispatchable resource that's needed to help kind of fill in those intermittent resources like solar and wind. When the sun's not shining at night, for example, or the wind is not blowing. And so we need to make sure we have reliable power 24/7, 365. You all and I expect 99.999% reliability. And we're going to make sure that stays that way and that the power is affordable long term. Our goal is to stay, under or at the rate of inflation as far as rates go. So all of that, that we have to do is very vital, important. There's a lot of economic growth resulting from this. We're probably going to attract suppliers to Virginia because of this massive growth in the electric power industry. It's very capital intensive, requires a massive ecosystem to be successful. Partners like Commonwealth Fusion Systems, other technology companies from solar storage technologies, looking at long duration storage to help fill in some of those peak demands as well during heat waves or cold snaps. And then, existing nuclear fission, we're one of the largest operators in the U.S. And we work very closely with April and the Virginia Nuclear Energy Consortium to enable a whole ecosystem in Virginia as well. And it's been very exciting to work on developing small modular reactors, which are about 300 to 400 megawatts apiece per power block. We are developing a project at North Anna Power Station in Louisa County, and we are very close to selecting a technology for that, which is very exciting. That's available today. And I think what will happen is all of that, it's very important to have a diverse energy portfolio. Not one technology at this point do we see, kind of taking the whole bag of marbles and going away. But I think, having that diverse portfolio is needed. There are pros and cons to each technology. Some are intermittent, some are operating all the time. Nuclear is always on. Gas-fired generation sometimes is on and reduced in output, depending on solar and wind production. So all of that's important. We're going to balance this and make sure that we're reliable and affordable and increasingly clean over the years.
There you go. So continuing on the generation mix itself, Morgan, we just sort of and you'll just give us a broad overview of the different types of generation sources and how Dominion's developing them. From Virginia Natural Gas, what have you seen happening to your energy usage? How have things changed for you over the last 3 to 5 years?
Yeah. Good morning. Thanks for everyone being here today. So take a step back first and talk a little bit. So Virginia Natural Gas, we're the local distribution company. We serve from Virginia Beach to Ashland. And that's the distribution side of the business. So if you think about it, similar to the electric side where you have production or generation, so natural gas, you have generation, you then have transmission. So that's larger infrastructure that moves natural gas into Virginia. And then at the end, you have distribution level. So that directly connects to families, businesses, hospitals, schools. In our service territory, military is one of our largest customers. So going to speak a little bit about from the distribution side of what we've seen of growth in a region, but also on the transmission side, which is the larger infrastructure that brings gas to Virginia. I'd say probably one of the biggest differences between our two industries is whereas Dominion's looking at a lot of building more generation in Virginia, for natural gas, nearly all of our natural gas comes from other states. So very little natural gas is produced in Virginia. A very small amount comes from Southwest Virginia, but we're reliant on natural gas coming from other states, mostly from, think about Pennsylvania, from the Gulf area, getting to Virginia. So you have to have pipelines to transport this large amount of energy. On the distribution side, so what we're seeing in our area is we've continued to see growth. We've never not seen growth. There is more natural gas moving today on a distribution side in Virginia across the entire Commonwealth. And that is because it's the growth that we're all seeing in your communities. If you see a new housing development being built, what often comes with that? It's a new strip center or shopping area. And I notice it all the time. Now I work for utility. I constantly see new meters. There's a new meter on name your favorite restaurant or name your favorite convenience store. And so we're seeing that 1% annual growth year over year. What has been new, and I think probably the topic of conversation that we're seeing regularly is where we're really seeing is unprecedented large demands for growth on our transmission infrastructure. So while we're the distribution company in Hampton Roads and going up to the peninsula to the area we're in today, and I didn't check outside, but I'm pretty sure there's a gas meter probably heating this building that we're in right now. There'd be a V&G customer. But we also own transmission assets that connect Northern Virginia, Richmond to Hampton Roads. And we've had that transmission asset that's been in service since 1992. And what we're seeing along that corridor, if you think about the 95 to 64 corridor, is just unprecedented inquiries for large load users. And that's a mix of electric generation and large load users such as data centers, where now data centers are looking at even as they see grid constraints or just opportunities. We have seen companies exploring, do they want to build, own, and operate their own generation that's behind the meter, not connected to the grid, that they can serve themselves. And so we're continuing to see that as a company. That is a trend that we're seeing across the country. It's not limited to Virginia. We are part of a much larger family of companies that has electric generation in the South, and as well as other gas utilities in other spaces. And so we are seeing that continued demand growth, but that will require continued growth in infrastructure to support that demand.
One thing I would add too is I think firmly in the next 5 years, data center growth is going to go to where the natural gas resources are in large part, because they need to build now, and that's a resource that's available to build near term. It takes a long time to develop and build out nuclear infrastructure or even fusion infrastructure. Hopefully that time will come down, but in the near term, I think natural gas, that availability and where that energy can be converted from methane molecules to electricity is where the data centers will be populated.
Well, and not to, I guess, to double down on that as we talk about infrastructure, but Morgan, you look at that large growth. Do we have the infrastructure today to handle that? Do we need to continue building out more gas infrastructure in the state?
A simple answer is it's complex, and some of that really depends on both Dominion and Virginia Natural Gas. We're regulated utilities, and with that, we have to ensure investments, these heavily capital investments, when we are going before the Virginia State Corporation Commission, are reasonable and prudent for our customers.
Right.
And so with that, we cannot just build hoping something comes. We have to have a customer in hand. We have to do that due diligence to ensure that they're going to consume that energy that they expect, because we have to do that on behalf of all of our other ratepayers, frankly, everyone in this room, to ensure that we're making sound investments while we're thinking affordability in mind, and that we're not, I think a thing we've heard a lot about in the news lately is shifting costs. And so with that, it really depends on the size of the load about gas infrastructure. If it is a large new project, and this could be the same for a large manufacturer, it's not necessarily limited to a data center, or if a military installation wants a large amount. It really depends on if it's a firm load. And what we mean is natural gas, in a lot of ways, it's seasonal in nature. So there is large quantities of natural gas in the summertime. We've seen more as electric generation uses more, but it really is those peak winter months when people are turning up their heat in their homes and their schools and hospitals. Is there that availability on those coldest of winter days to ensure that families continue to heat their homes and our large energy users have that. There's various solutions to get to that. I think all of it requires more infrastructure. Some of that, there may be opportunities for regional storage. So an example of that is again, on those hot summer days, the natural gas is still flowing in the pipes. You can liquefy it, you can store it in the region, and then you can call upon it again in those winter months and utilize the existing pipelines that are already in the ground. So you're maximizing what already may be in the region. That's an option. There's an option of building more infrastructure. Are there opportunities to build more in existing utility corridors? Natural gas moves from pressure. There may be some opportunities to do more compression to move natural gas. I'd say all of that requires a lot of coordination. It requires regulatory filings and proceedings. And so, but we're required, both Dominion and Virginia Natural Gas, to serve. And so if a large customer comes to us, we have a dedicated team that will work to see what are we able to do. And a lot of times, like, the answer is not no, it's how can we do it? It may not be tomorrow. It may take some time. It may require some federal projects. Again, may have to get the state out of state, may have to get the gas from out of state to Virginia. But we have a team that works in collaboration with other gas companies that transport gas across state lines, as well as in the region. So it is possible. It just takes a little bit of time and a lot of coordination and support. I'd say that's probably the biggest piece is all energy infrastructure projects. As this region, this mega region, looks to attract one of the most high energy users, I would say, regardless if it's a solar project or a natural gas project, what really is going to be needed to support a lot of these infrastructure investments is community support. Because you can say you like one energy or another, there's opposition to all of it. Having regional, local government, community support will be critical to bring this more energy to the region.
Perfect. Thank you. I wanted to go to April next. Nuclear fission is another generation source where Virginia's been a leader for a long time, right? And now you're leading VNEC. One of my questions for you is, how are you sort of helping organize progress on the fission side? And, what do we need from, I guess we're sort of changing into the infrastructure, but also people infrastructure, right? So what do we need from our educational system in Virginia to continue supporting this growth, this infrastructure growth and this load growth?
Good morning. I'm going to go back just a little bit too and show that how our founders of VNAC were looking ahead and seeing that in 2013, they're like, nuclear is going to come back and we need to be prepared for it here in Virginia. So they went to the legislature and they created two organizations, one called the Virginia Nuclear Energy Consortium Authority. The authorities ran through the state. The governor appoints those board members, but they wanted to have a working arm as well. So they created my organization. We're a membership-based organization, but we've always been a partnership between industry and universities. So, our focus has been educating about the industry, supporting the current industry, but also looking forward in what we needed to do, deploy new reactors and expand research here in Virginia, but also workforce. So one of the things that we've been really focusing on recently is more education. Communities have put their hands up and said, yes, we want nuclear in their community, and found that not everyone in the community is supportive. And that's just because we have to go back out and do a better job at educating. The nuclear industry has not been historically good about that. We really need it, and we're working to change that narrative. But to give the community the tools and understanding and the resources of what is nuclear power, why do we need nuclear power, And we don't shy away from our history either. We do have a history, but we also need to take back the narrative when we talk about spent fuel byproduct, because that's actually a resource and it has been stored safely on commercial sites for over 50 years. In fact, a couple of years ago, I was in the legislature, and a legislator said to me, he goes, April, I'm just really concerned about the waste. And I said, can I show you a picture? And he said, yeah. And just by chance, the former Assistant Secretary of Energy from Department of Energy was at Dominion's North Anna site, and she's there hugging a container of byproduct. And he looks at the picture and he goes, that's it? And I was like, that's it. So we have to do a better job of making sure communities know the impact, show them what is actually how much byproduct is stored on site. So that's what we're doing right now. We've gone into communities. We're doing a webinar series right now, just educating. And we partner up with NGOs like Clean Air Task Force, Nuclear Innovation Alliance, to bring in speakers to talk about nuclear energy and bring in younger people to talk about it. I know I look young, but I've been in the industry for a little over 20 something years. But I am still one of the youngest people in the room when we're having a meeting, and I'm one of the only females in the room, which has been good for my ego, but it's not good for the industry. So we need to do a better job encouraging women and minorities to get involved in the industry. And one of the ways that we need to be doing that is in the schools. I mean, most of you, pretty much most of us have children. They've probably said that they wanted to be a fireman or a doctor or a lawyer. How many has ever said, I want to work in the energy industry? Probably none. Um, but we need to do a better job of people understanding what what opportunities they are to work in the energy industry. They need to understand that you don't have to be a nuclear engineer. In fact, the biggest secret in nuclear is that we really don't need that many nuclear engineers. We need more people that communicate. We need skilled labor. We need technicians. We need business development. We need so many diverse, and it's not just for nuclear. Gas is the same way. We need people to understand what it is to work in the energy industry and all the opportunities that there are between wind and solar and nuclear fusion and gas. There's a lot of opportunities. So one of the things that we're doing right now is developing a workforce plan for the nuclear industry as we look forward. Because at some point there is going to be an announcement, and we need to be ready for the workforce that's needed to go forward here in Virginia.
Continuing on this thread and bringing it back to you, Rick, what does CFS need from your local industry and community partners as you break ground here in Virginia?
Well, I appreciate the question. I'll just step back and say we've been incredibly excited about the partnership that we've already had in working with the state, with Chesterfield County, with the local community. To April's point, I mean, it's clear that education is critical, and for fusion in particular, because people don't know what it is and like what should we think about it. And we've been try to be very forward-leaning and making sure we're very clear with the community on what it is, what we're doing, what our plans are, and so forth. And we've been extremely excited about the engagement and the interest. And we see this all the time. We see people go from fusion, like they just don't know what fusion is, so they're fusion curious maybe, to then maybe fusion skeptic, to then fusion evangelist. and people ask us, well, how do you think about community acceptance? Like we don't talk about community acceptance. We talk about community excitement, and we want to generate that and be a part of the community that people feel excited to be a part of. So you asked what help can we use? We're already working with the state and the county and local community and universities on figuring out ways that we can make fusion a bigger area of interest and activity in Virginia. That relates to supply chain. It relates to R&D, such that Virginia and this region, and this mega region, becomes not just the place where the first fusion power plant is built, but it's like a global hub for fusion. And we're excited about those opportunities. With respect to businesses, I would say, if you're in one of these communities, be curious, go to the meetings, learn about it. For one thing, it may have implications for your business. fusion is a whole new industry. It does not exist today other than like in national labs and so forth. As a commercial power source, it will be a whole new industry. Like, and the size of that industry is not something in the billions. It's literally in the trillions. So if you think about, wow, there might be an opportunity for my business in that completely new industry, come talk to us because we think it's going to be it's going to be huge. Obviously, as we talked about all the benefits of fusion, the one thing that it doesn't have right now is it's just not here right now. If it was, I'd be kicking up my feet and having a drink and just taking orders from customers. It'd be great, but it's not there yet. So I think be engaged, learn about it, help to understand how it can impact not only your business but your community, because we think it's going to be really important. This educational piece is really, really important. And every piece of infrastructure you build is built on some land that's near somebody, whether it's a residence, whether it's a commercial company, whether it's an industrial facility. Invariably, it is in a community. And so we just have to be very clear and careful about what we're doing, and people can understand it and recognize the benefits that it brings, and also recognize that it still means physical infrastructure that needs to be built.
Thank you. Emil, we're talking about infrastructure. We're talking about, you know, workforce and new types of infrastructure, and the sort of need for growth, right? This need for growth is, I guess you and I haven't talked about it. I've talked about it with some other folks, right? To many people at Dominion who have been there for decades, it still feels unprecedented to them. How does a Fortune 500 company deal with this, like, shift to an almost unprecedented situation? Like, what is the mindset requirement, right, for you all? Like you said, your team has grown significantly, but how are you all handling sort of having a whole new environment in which to work in, and what does that do?
Yeah, so our workforce is growing tremendously. It's such an exciting time. I've been in the industry 35 years now, and I have not seen such explosive growth as what's happened just in the last few years. Really, just super dynamic period in our industry. Where all technologies are being deployed. I would say our company is probably one of the ones in the U.S. that are leading, a very diverse portfolio of solutions across technologies today and those of tomorrow, such as fusion, looking at long duration energy storage opportunities, even hydrogen capable, gas turbines in the future, as well as our small modular reactor development. This it's going to take a lot of skilled people to make that happen. If you just go to our website and look at all of the job postings we have out there, I mean, we used to have maybe a couple dozen at any point in time. Now we have hundreds at any point in time out there, from skilled labor all the way to senior leaders in the company. And we have to do. We're doing a lot. I think we can do a bit more, but attracting talent. We have a very strong intern program to attract students to our company in lots of different fields, from accounting to legal folks, folks that deal with public and education of our industry, with legislators, with those in the communities, local government leaders. And I think we have to put all oars in the water on explaining the excitement around this industry today. I think that's helping to attract a lot of people to our companies across all of those within on the stage here. So I can't emphasize enough too the importance of skilled labor. We're going to need a lot of electricians, welders, millwrights, all of the really skilled trades to build all of this infrastructure. It's as others have mentioned, this is one of the most capital intensive industries in the world, the energy industry. And it takes a lot of people to build gigawatts of infrastructure over the years. And so, we're working with community colleges, for example, to, put together programs that are centered around technologies. For example, our offshore wind project, we worked with local community colleges around here and in the Hampton Roads area to enable, that skilled labor to come to fruition. And it was extremely successful. And we're still doing that today. We're going to need a lot of technicians to operate these facilities, on a 24/7 basis. The power has to be there when you flip that light switch anytime, right? So it's a 24/7 operation, and we're very excited. We have lots of job postings out there. So if you know anyone that is interested in the energy industry, I would encourage them to take a look at any of the entities here on the panel. I'm sure have a lot of demand for human resources.
So I just want to add one thing. My son told me this a few years ago. He was trying to tell me how uncool I was. But at the same time, he gave me the biggest compliment. He goes, "But what you do is cool." And that's one thing that I think we need to do as we're talking, making sure you guys at home are talking to your children about how great it is to work in the energy industry. There's a lot of great opportunities, and it is cool. It's a lot of fun. It's never a boring day. I mean, there's always something going on and a news story that we're advancing and going forward, especially right now. Things are moving really fast, and kids today really understand about how much we need the internet and AI, more so than I'm still learning, I think, every day. My son has a better understanding than I do. But it is a cool place to be right now.
Uh, Morgan, how are you making energy cool again? How how's, how does 2026 look? As I asked Emil, like, what again, this change is coming for Virginia Natural Gas as well. How are you all handling it? What does it feel like to be at a utility that's suddenly being asked to do things that you weren't being asked to do early in your career?
I know. So this year, Virginia Natural Gas, we're celebrating 175 years
Whoa.
in business. So we're one of the oldest corporations in the Commonwealth, and we've changed a lot over that time. Just think about natural gas generally. Natural gas used to come from burning coal in plants. It wasn't through these large pipelines that now move states. So there's lots of conversations about fracking, but I would say I don't think people think about where natural gas came before then, which was burning coal in communities to then create natural gas um, at that time. So lots of changes happen. But we're spending a lot of time on, what I spend a lot of time on is really just educating. Our infrastructure, nearly all of it is below ground. People don't think about it. They don't know it's there, and don't really understand how it's being used in their community on a daily basis. We heat almost every school in the region. Colleges and universities are some of our largest users. You think about dorms, large spaces, hospitals, for example. Military is one of our largest customers. You cannot make an aircraft carrier or submarine without natural gas. And so we're just spending a lot more time on educating about how it's used, because frankly, for a lot of time, we didn't have to. There wasn't really that conversation about it, and we were able to operate our business kind of on the sidelines. You may have seen us in the right of way, maybe not, but now we have found we have to talk about a lot more about the work that our 400 employees and about 600 contractors do every day to provide energy 24/7, 365. So I think that's one of the biggest changes, that we're just talking about it a lot more and educating about the use. And I think moving forward, what we'll see is just even more collaboration with our partners. I know there's some local government representatives in the room, but as we think again about, as you think about your community and maybe wanting your community to become part of this global internet hub, to think about having those communities now with your neighbors about what does that mean, and can you come to the utilities and say, we want a data center or we want this high energy user, and we've talked about this area and they know that there's going to be more overhead transmission lines, or they know there's going to be more natural gas distribution or transmission. And that will help with that sense of urgency that I know John Martin kind of kicked us off of, understanding what may be happening associated with all the potential this industry has to grow our region and create new jobs for the next generation.
Well, I said we wanted to save some time for questions, so I don't know how you all are handling audience questions, but if someone has a burning question, we have a microphone. Amazing. Um, there's a couple.
So with all the new stuff that y'all have been talking about, how are we set up from a transmission standpoint, and how much improvements are going to happen to that in order to be able to handle all of this increased load?
I assume you're talking about electric transmission, not gas transmission? Okay. We're going to need a lot of it. You can't deploy, yeah, both. I mean, yeah, there's really two reasons that new transmission is being built or needs to be built. One is new generation, driven by the need for new power generation facilities. The second is, large customer demand like data centers, which require generally, for the scale of projects being deployed today, require connection to the transmission system as opposed to the electric distribution system. So both of those are going to be needed, and we're expanding all of that. We're spending about $2.5 billion per year right now on electric transmission infrastructure in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and that's really mostly, I would say, largely data center driven. As we build more more power generation facilities, that's going to require also expanding our transmission system to get the power to where it needs to go. We can't build all of our new generation in Northern Virginia, Loudoun County. That's not going to happen. So we have to put it in places where the right community support exists, where the right infrastructure exists for water or natural gas or other resources like that. I think just another example on our system today within what's called the Dominion Zone in the PJM interconnection region. That's basically about a 25,000 megawatt system. You cannot add 35,000 megawatts and keep the transmission system the same. So, that's more than doubling our capacity. And I like to say, what it took 115 years for us to accomplish, we have to do again in 15 years. So a lot of transmission will have to be built. Some of that is going to be in new right-of-ways. And, we're going to ask for support from those communities that we have to pass through. I mean, it's inevitable that that has to happen. Not everyone likes infrastructure like that in their backyard, but it's really vital for the broader good of the Commonwealth and our customers. So, we don't have an option not to connect customers. We're required to serve all customers that request electric service. And data centers are coming because of all the devices that we are using every day. That are connected to the internet. So everyone in this room is creating that demand. It's not really data centers. It's all of us here in this room and everyone in all the communities of the Commonwealth. So a lot of transmission will be built. I think quite a bit of new natural gas infrastructure is likely to be built, especially in the next 10 years as we find other technologies as well to deploy, like nuclear fission and fusion technologies.
Yeah, and I think Emil made an important point that I hear a lot in conversations. So utilities like Dominion, Virginia Natural Gas we don't create the demand, we serve the demand. And often, so just something to think about when you're seeing, well, why is that new power line being built? Or it's often to serve, it could be a new school, or it could be more homes built in a community to help with housing affordability. As we know, there's not enough homes. And to get to that new cul-de-sac, often requires more infrastructure, whether electric or natural gas. Agree that going back to the question that more transmission infrastructure is needed. Virginia Natural Gas, we just had come in service. I think it was 4 days, no, 2 weeks ago now. They were under contract November 1st. This is the first new natural gas transmission line to enter Hampton Roads since 1992. And it took that long. It was over 30 years. It's because energy efficiency has worked. Buildings and homes have become more efficient. Businesses have become more efficient. But it's now the scale of the energy demand, especially on peak times, and so those really hot days, those really cold days, that have necessitated more infrastructure being built. But our region and the Commonwealth, for a really long time, we were able to add large amounts of customers due to energy efficiency, just folks using energy better, but it's just the size and scale of these new loads require that investment.
That's a really good point. Next question.
Yeah, great panel. Appreciate the information and insight. How much competition is there in the other surrounding states like North Carolina, Maryland, West Virginia for building data centers? We need it in Virginia because of the subsea cables coming in and the business that we're in. Is there collaboration with other states, like bringing in natural gas from other states? But is there collaboration with other data centers and energy systems that could potentially export that energy to Virginia?
So right now, I will say that there just generally, if you look at the state by state demand, Virginia is definitely the top market in the U.S. for data centers by far. Probably times 5 of the next largest data center markets elsewhere in the country or even the world. But they're looking at other locations too. So that to your point, some of the other bigger markets, and Stan over there can probably correct me, he's closer to it in our data center practice, but Georgia, like Atlanta, Georgia, Columbus, Ohio, Dallas, Texas, those are emerging as potentially large markets as well. And they're going to go where the power is being built and developed, where the energy resources are available. They're not going to wait 7 to 10 years to build their data center. They can get them permitted and built in 2 to 3 years. And the challenge there is, new power generation and transmission infrastructure, because of largely equipment lead times and the permitting process, can take anywhere from 5 to 10 years. So you have just a natural misalignment in the timelines for building a data center versus building energy infrastructure. And everyone's trying to figure out where they can find the next available gigawatt of available power to connect their data center. And I think, like I mentioned, in the near term, they're probably going to go where the natural gas resources are abundant. And there's really 2 locations generally in the U.S. It's the Marcellus Shale region, which is where Morgan mentioned is a massive resource, and a lot of natural gas is flowing from that Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Ohio area, and then the Gulf of Mexico region, Texas, Louisiana, and those are the locations where I think we're going to probably see long term most of the data centers gravitating to, at least in the next 5 to 10 years. After that, other technologies I think will come to the market, like fission and fusion, and other technologies too, even beyond that.
April, are there other states that we're competing with to get more fission on the on the grid?
Well, that depends what you think competition is. I think Virginia is leading in the competition because we have more nuclear than any other state, and we have with what we have defense, commercial, BWXT, Framatome, and all the supporting companies. We do really have more nuclear than anyone else. But yes, we're competing. There's a lot of states out there that are putting up a lot more money and being a little bit more flashy than Virginia is. But that doesn't mean that we're not in competition. Several companies that are on our board, they don't have a project here in Virginia. They hope to have a project here in Virginia at some point. The other thing about Virginia that we have that, we think about Huntington Ingalls, they build ships and they build reactors, but they're also part of the new build that we're going to be seeing. They're part of building Vogtle, and they're going to be a part of building the small modular reactors and advanced reactors that we're going to see coming once we fill that order book.
I just want to double down a little bit on what Emil said. If you don't have power, these businesses won't come here. It's just flat out, that's what it's going to happen. So if you can't build a transmission, if you can't build a generation, if you can't build the lines that get the power or the molecules to where you need it, they won't come. We're in a world today where the data center operators had many criteria for deploying their data centers. The top one now is speed to power, and if you don't have it, they won't come. It's just their business demands that they build the data centers. To Emil's point, we are all the customers of that business, and it's not just data centers. They're a unique example because they build very large single sites. Like we're talking gigawatt-sized sites. Several hundred megawatts to gigawatt-sized sites. So they're going where the power is available. And right now we're seeing developments in states that they've never been to before, because we live in a world today where there used to be marginal capacity on the grids. That does not exist now, and not at gigawatt scale. Like going from 25 gigawatts to 35 gigawatts, like, sorry, you can't show up unless generation shows up. And for generation to get to the actual facility, you need the transmission. So do what you can in this region to make sure that works, and the business will come.
All right, I think we got one last question.
Hello, my name is Jean Frank. I'm from Virginia Peninsula Community College, and I'm very interested in something that April had said about the education. We'd like to set up an educational pathway for all these technicians and engineers that are needed for this infrastructure for the next 5, 10, 20, 30 years. Do you guys have something already set up that we can connect to for the employers? For what do you need?
We're working on that right now. In fact, let's you and I talk,
Yes,
and I'll bring you into.
Thank you.
We have a working group that is going on right now. We have almost 60 members. There are some community colleges already involved, but we'd love to add you in. Industry, labor, we have economic development and part of this group that we're just trying to develop that workforce plan. We had a vehicle bill pass the legislature in 2023. We would like to see if we can put some funding behind that with our plan.
Okay, thank you very much, and I'll look for you later.
All right. With that, I think we got to wrap up. Right, Greg? All right. Thank you very much to the panel. Remember, everybody, infrastructure is cool. Energy is cool. Tell everyone to come work in energy, because otherwise you don't get AI. All right. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Adam. Well, I told you guys, unbelievable